All right, hey, welcome back to New Script on the Block. I'm Nero, and with me is Alyssa. We're both hosting or co-hosting together with Dewey as our guest. Dewey D. Lang Jr. What's a D for?
Dwayne.
Dwayne Lang Jr.
Yeah,
wow.
Tongue twister of
And a
many
junior,
sorts.
which means, like, not only is that your name, but, like, your family liked it so much they used it twice.
My dad liked it so much he used it twice. My mom has changed me to DJ so that you don't have that whole, like, mix of words and letters and everything. It's just
So
easier.
when she says Dewey, it's not like both of you turn and suddenly look.
Exactly.
This is going to sound super weird. Personal fact.
Mm-hmm.
Personal fact.
Fun facts.
Yeah.
Fun facts.
So my mom's name is Jennifer,
Mm-hmm.
but my dad's mom's name is also Jennifer, which is weird, but also, like, for a time they would call my mom Jenny just because it was obviously confusing. But now that she's an adult woman, Jenny isn't quite as,
Yeah, as appropriate for that
Yeah,
particular
exactly.
situation.
What? I don't agree. But anyway, it's all good. But we are here going over Dewey's narrative short, Pure, and how with this special circumstance that it was adapted into being a script, which was written by Alyssa Eshelman. So
yeah. So
you want to explain
Very well
that?
done, too.
Thank you. I appreciate
look at
that. I like the short story too. So Dewey, you wrote the original short story, and maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I believe it was actually with the intention of entering it into, like, I can't remember if it was some sort of writing contest or what was it for.
So there was a writing contest I saw that was on a community forum that they were talking about writing for sort of a horror-based writing, and so I wanted to see if I could do a quick short story so that I could see where I was in my writing style. And as I progressed through the story, I felt that this is something that could be easily transferred over, or not really easily as it were, it's been a little complicated process, but could be taken over to something that would be a short story to a film and, made something, and progress somewhere and actually sort of build my own self inside and outside with the story as well as a short story. Okay. So it was something that I did see as I was putting up for doing a contest, and unfortunately the contest itself, and I'm sort of happy that because they were just originally going to sort of post it into like a form and then a book, and if they did that I would have a whole lot of control over revising it and editing it after that point. So they had so many influx at that time that they said, well, you can submit next time. And I was like, okay, cool. I get a chance to actually revise it and everything. And then I started thinking more about it. And then that's when I approached you about trying to take this and move this over into a short film and progress into other forms and facets of the film side and theatrical side.
Gotcha. So can you give us a little bit of background? You mentioned that you started doing this script as a part of that short script, like I'm calling it a challenge or a contest.
Contest.
And when you did that, it was for you to test your ability. Is writing something you've been doing for a long time? Like
I've been writing off and on for a while. I mean, ever since really high school and a few other places where I've submitted poems and I've submitted some short stories here and there. None of them are sort of the darker side. Is this one seems to be more of a horror essence, Lovecraftian as it were. But I haven't really done a whole lot in that for a while because as it is, my day job is IT. I'm working as IT, but I've been trying my best to find a way to get the other piece of me that's out there that you don't get a chance to sort of blossom into sort of in the technical field.
Yeah.
And the writing itself is where I was hoping to try to refacilitate from back both in college years and high school years back into this, and then try and submit into some forums and maybe take that to the next level. And that's where I sort of am standing now, and I'm hoping that this will be that next stepping stone towards that level.
So since college, is this really the first piece that you've worked on, or?
I had a few pieces. I actually had a manga that I released, and I had released it in sort of a short version of it, and I had written it. It was more of a it wasn't this style and,
Okay.
and everything. And I was wanting to try and do more with it and actually engage some other heads of some large companies to see if they actually liked it. And they said, you need to look at like writing style, not towards just a simple writing, but also towards production writing. And that's where I sort of backed myself off of it and wanted to understand, what do I need to do at that point? How do I need to approach that? And use that feedback not as, oh, it hurt me, as feedback to go, what do I need to do the next level? What do I need to build of my own? And start small and start building myself up. And
can I interject a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like I know what you're. I hope I understand what you're going with, and like, it's just kind of like tough when whatever you're trying to write and being creative, it's that tightrope of it being sellable, I guess.
Oh yeah.
And then it being yours and something that you.
It needs to be something you care about, but it also needs to be something that an audience will be attracted to.
Definitely
No.
tough.
There is a
super
dichotomy.
tough.
There's definite dichotomy. And like when I have to write the short story, and that's one of the things that we've been sort of going back and forth with on the film piece of it, is writing this in the short story. There's a lot of emotion that you put into it, and you can write into that, where that emotion is hard to show and demonstrate in the short story, and actually trying to bring that type of emotion to the character base. So you actually have to think both, well, not in the story, but also from the audience perspective.
Absolutely.
And that is something that it's having to take another step back, take the bigger picture into consideration, take the people the audience that I'm looking at.
Are people going to get these things? Are people going to pick up? Are they going to register this differently than I do?
Mm-hmm.
And I've met a lot of artists that get hung up on that too. Like have a hard time with like, hey, these things. How are you portraying it in a way that allows the audience to get the same knowledge as you without, spoon feeding or overdoing it?
Yeah. And one of the things too that I come across is I've seen this in going through productions where they start out with a script that's serious, and through the whole process ends up getting turned into something like a comedy.
Yeah, definitely seen that before.
We've seen that. Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
We had the reverse. We we were going to do a comedy, and then like the producers turned it into a drama.
Make it darker.
Yeah.
and that's some of the stuff that both I'm scared of, and apprehensive of, but in the same token, I think that's almost like invigorating to see that piece and stuff like that change and look at it through both, not just my eyes, but other people's eyes, and work and go that forward. And so I'll get off on my own tangents, as you know. So
that's just the basis of any sort of collaboration, is that that whatever you came up with is going to change the more hands are on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
trying to stay with the core piece is what I'd like to believe in. This, some of the stuff that, Alyssa and I have been going back and forth with is just trying to make sure that we're staying at that core piece, but then developing the story so that the audience actually understands where we're coming from on both.
Absolutely.
The transition from the short story to the short film.
So today we're going to read the short story and the short script so people can kind of hear the comparison side by side and how they're different, and it's the same environment, it's the same story, but they are very different in the way they're told because, taking a character and making them, become...
Like bring them to the sort of the atmosphere and what the audience needs to see versus what inside of the story is going to be sort of two different structures that we ran into, and trying to actually build the character in there so that you actually can see him as a character versus in the story.
It's first person. That's the other struggle, and I think a lot of this isn't even the first time we've talked about this on this podcast, but with narrative novelistic writing. You have the ability to write first person, and a lot of stories are told that way, and they can be really impactful that way because you put yourself in the shoes of the character as they're experiencing what's happening. But when you're writing for a screenplay, you can't write in first person because you're watching a character no matter what, and then trying to accomplish those same feelings and emotions, but knowing that it's not told in a way that's first person.
Unless it's like a Shakespearean type film. Where you just speak your emotions out loud. So we do know, if it is narrated.
Lovecraftian Shakespeare.
Whoa.
Wow, that would be an interesting concept. That'll be something I might have to go into and look into
next.
next,
All right.
Okay. Do you want to, I think the next step for us then would be we have a log line for the script. Do you want to read that?
I can
Do you
read the
feel
log
like
line.
that's fairly, unfortunately, like the log line's just for the script and not for the short story.
Well, hold on. Just because it might show the process of like developing the log line after
Yeah.
reading the
The
short story. So maybe we
maybe just
read
like
this,
a brief summary of the short story and then hop into it.
and then go into the log line
So
because
we'll not do the log line at where we normally would. Sorry.
we'll just
No,
go
that's-
process by process. You know,
Okay.
It's very
That works.
linear.
So if you could just tell the audience, like, I know you all kind of mentioned that it's Lovecraftian and what the purpose of writing it was for, but if you could talk a little bit about the story and the environment.
So the story and environment from my perspective within this on the short story itself is it's like somebody who's trying to find a way to get away from being overwhelmed by everything, and he wants to sort of disconnect himself and go somewhere that he's always found as someplace that's comfortable, that gets him away from that he can relax and find sort of peace. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and things start to take a change, but the inner reflection is that sort of what's happening within the story? Is that what he's actually seeing, or is that just something more existential? And that's sort of where I want within the frame of the short story to be. I know that seems a bit convoluted, but in Lovecraftian, and unfortunately, if you look at a lot of their writing or his writing, it is very sort of convoluted, but it also makes you question specific details about things, thereby sort of questioning what your feelings are, and then also your own sort of horror in that piece of it, so that it brings out a lot of the thoughts and concepts that need to go forward.
Like horror of awareness.
Oh yeah, it's
Like,
it's a psychological
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
genre. Yeah. Okay. Great. So Dewey, if you don't mind, we'll hop into the short story. We'll have you go ahead and read that. Title, everything, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You don't have to give out your email address.
I don't plan on it. But if somebody reaches out to you or wants to reach out to me, I have no problem with that email address.
You should share it.
What?
Just
Well,
go
the
ahead,
info.
show it.
You can, if anyone has feedback for Dewey, they can reach out to us at info@arizonastudios.com and we can forward that.
That's
along
fair.
to Dewey.
Thank you
Okay.
very
Yeah,
much.
we'll keep your information private for sure.
Okay. So the name of the short story is Pure, written by me, Dewey D. Lang Jr. Staring in the distance, I feel something has changed. The ocean crashes over the rocks and sprays a salty mist onto the half moonglow, half dark gray sea rocks. The menacing sky over the horizon enumerates a dark and brooding depth of terror in the air. The night echoes with the thunder as the ominous clouds slowly move closer. I have sat here in this overgrown, forlorn section of the beach, which no one has dared to stay for more than an hour, except for me. Year over year, I have returned to release the thoughts of the horrific insanity I call society. To others, this spot is no more than a dank place filled with the wash of the ocean and the forgotten yesteryears. To me, though, it has been a place of pristine solitude, where the constant marches of technological death finally loosen its grip on my soul. What I thought until now would be my own peace is changing into something more menacing. But now, as I gaze over the ocean at the swells from the deep blue, my soul and mind are touching something deep within that murky, distant darkness, yearning for something more sinister than anything society could swell up today. I have seen dark and dangerous storms over the years, as they come and wreak havoc. But this is something different. It crawls in the back of your head and whispers, "Death," as it swallows your very essence. From deep inside my head, a voice begins to whisper, "Darkness is even scared of." I shake my head, trying to clear these dark subversions of destruction looming over the waters. Mumbling to myself in this confused state of desperation, I'm allowing my mind to free itself into the depths of my own reflected delusions, of what my own reality of mankind's darkest fears have become. The clarity I originally sought to find here has become but a mere devilish enhancement that has turned into almost pure torture. Watching from within this camouflage wall of a storm, as the storm gets closer, the air density drops, and the world seems so heavy now. Breathing is almost like a pierced claymore deep inside my chest, allowing me to only take hard breaths as I begin to be consumed by dread and confusion. What is this coming? Or rather, whom? As if a link to the cosmic reaches of destruction have waved its hands into existence. I, the first to witness the writhing doom that seems to be toying with my very essence. I hear a deep swoosh echo across the seawall around me, and the fear swells deeper within me. This unknown movement of the dark creeps closer to the land. Here in this place of personal refuge all these years, there is something right there. My eyes, in some possible illusion, find a silhouette of what should not be. Lightning now crashes down with a fury and circles around every part of my visual line of sight, making out a hand and something else, something that should not, by the laws of nature, be allowed to exist. But here within a few miles, moving from the horizon, is forcing itself on this reality. My heart has already been racing, but now I feel the fear creeping through my body as the shaking of time around me begins to slow. With a loss of all known hope of understanding, what am I witnessing being forced upon my soul? Suddenly, lightning explodes. With a sudden crash, debris flies in the air. Shrapnel scatters, landing on a slight peninsula protruding into the ocean near me. "Oh, Lord!" I scream out as the blinding bolt and mind-numbing explosion rock deep down into my very core. The wind becomes almost instantaneously piercing and so burly that I fear now that I should leave this cove, this forsaken place of witness monstrosity that now befalls my very existence. I am only a witness to the unimaginable, the undefined, the pure possibility of chaos itself. My thoughts seem a mix of my own and something almost alien. Overwhelm begins to eat inside me more and more. I can barely breathe, but I feel as if I should not, so not to draw more attention to me, as if someone so insignificant could be something more than a trifling whim that could be removed from existence with an inconsequential breath of this monumental deity before my eyes. Time again moved from almost frozen to so unimaginably fast. I could barely contemplate what was happening. Before I knew it, my conscience woke my delusion of inner horrific contemplation. To my witness, the mesoclone of darkness had enveloped my entirety of my sky, and of itself now. The only light that fills the maelstrom of wind and rain is the blinding lightning, now striking with insane ferocity from all directions as this silhouette that has now become a horrific shape now in front of my eyes, turning now to gaze into the eyes of something, so to the point awesome and terrifying at the same time. In your eyes, I see the pure chaos known as everything and all. I am a mere particle in a sea of giants. Darkness begins to envelop my sight as I become overwhelmed with petrified terror that has cocooned my sanity and conscience into full-on mental collapse, fading into the pure.
Cool. So let's talk about the short a little bit before we dive into the script, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so Dewey, I know you talked a little bit about what led you to write it and then kind of the inspirations. Something that we talked about when we set into the process for writing the script adaptation was the kind of dual meaning behind the way that it's written and how it can be perceived either as something like real and physical or representing something else. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So one of the pieces that sort of presenting that's we're trying to move over more into the film base is both understanding of like, yes, there could be this menacing and monstrous thing there, or as well as later down, you actually have the ability for it to be something like a mental illness that this person is dealing with. I mean, he's got, he definitely sees sort of has anxiety issues. He's dealing with this a lot that's overwhelming him, but there is a sort of subterfuge or a subtitle almost of possible mental illness or mental problems that are happening there, as well as, is this something that's actually happening? Is this something that is just him trying to cope with the situation? Is this just a reflection on society in its entirety, and he's just there trying to figure out this experience on his own? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that we're trying to blossom within the film itself, is actually to take that piece and grow it so that we can see that and see those layers and build on those layers inside the film. Hopefully that was not too convoluted, but I was trying to sort of expand on it because there was different levels of how we approached that concept.
Absolutely. And I think that it registers in the story, like now that I know that about it and going back and rereading it, I feel like I really can see that this is kind of like, yes, in a sense you can believe that there is this Cthulhu-esque, like, monstrous existence, or alternatively it's this guy is just completely losing it and he's honestly believing and seeing things that aren't there.
It's like almost having like a schizophrenic type of breakdown.
Yeah.
And that piece of it is, we don't want them to say, okay, this is just a person who has pure mental illness, but this is the question of, is that his reality, or is that the real reality? That
actual reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where I'm very pleased on where Alyssa has taken the story and developed it there.
Do you, Nero, have any questions about the short story before we step into the script?
They might share the same questions, so I don't know.
Want to do it.
I don't know if I should say my questions now or.
Okay.
But overall, I just feel like with this short narrative, there just seems to be a betrayal of where he used to find solace. So I definitely like that. I like that you're playing with that. But I guess what I can't stop thinking about more so is like what's triggering this now? Like, why now? I mean, obviously, mental illness isn't something that can be, quantifiable. Like, you know when it exactly is going to happen.
Yeah.
But it seems like this person has kept coming to this spot, and maybe this spot, he is still able to have like some sort of consistent safety while
safety
there.
net of sorts.
But it's changed now, for sure. And maybe we can talk about that a little after, especially with how it's being adapted in the screenplay. So,
and actually, the screenplay does sort of approach that a little bit in a different fashion, and because of the dynamics of the screenplay, it actually, to me, almost helps quantify that question that you sort of asked. There's some pieces in it, especially on his background.
Yeah.
That,
you mean with his because we I've read this again before this whole podcast thing, but like, are we talking about his like love interest and how that's kind of like a
that's going to be sort of within that? I think is also the cornerstone or the corner piece that's causing the breakdown that he's starting to happen.
Spoilers. All right, we're gonna hop into the script. We're gonna take a quick break, and then when you come back, we'll go ahead and get started on the short screenplay adaptation of this short story. We're looking forward to comparing the two and talking about the differences in the format. This podcast is brought to you by Arizona Studios. Arizona Studios, a full-service video content specialist. We're here to illuminate your message and compel your audience to take the right action. For more information, head to our website at arizonastudios.com and be sure to tune in for more content on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
And we're back.
And we're back. Yeah. Woo. Such a long break. We missed you guys.
I'm so old now.
So, Dewey, if you want to do the log line, I'll get into reading the narration, and then Near, I know you'll be reading for
I
the
am Dexter.
Dexter.
We didn't catch a name in the
because it's told first person in the short story, so you're reading the short story from the perspective of the character versus now it's like
now we have to have context.
Now we have to know who he is.
That
Yeah.
But I mean, okay, but is it important in the short story that we don't know his name or should know his name?
In the short story, to me, it doesn't make sense for him to know the name, as it is a reflection of people. Like, you're reading this, and all of a sudden I want that to be reflected on you. To me, if I gave him a name, then it, to me, disconnects.
There's a separation, yeah.
So I have a statement on that on the writing side of it. Like, so, because I've seen people do this in the past where in their scripts they'll write, like, the man or the woman or, like, very generic terms for characters they don't name. And I understand that if in the context of the story we don't see or hear their name, you don't have to have a name for the character. And in this, you don't hear his name. So you don't know for sure what his name is. But I think the only reason why as a writer using an actual name for a character is important is because it's just easier to read, in my opinion. Because it's easier to keep track of who's who and what they're doing if at least your main characters have names.
Right. Well, I would have definitely gone down that path if I'd had more than one or two characters in it. Like like within this, the short story, we build a little bit more of a character differential there, and in the film. So to me, in the short story, if I'd have made the short story longer, or if I would have had more characters, then I may have introduced the character name, whereas.
Well, and in the script there are, like, non-consequential, like, background characters, but still it would be really confusing on set to have, like, man in the t-shirt, man in...
man one, man two.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I guess I will read the log line.
Please.
The log line is... A tale of the supernatural forces of human emotion and mental illness. I really like that one.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to hop into it. Exterior beach day. The beach is nearly empty with sparse groups and individuals going about their day. The sky is rather cloudy with meek rays of sunlight peeking through. Dexter, 30s, settles into his sandy ground surrounded by overgrown marram grass. In his hand, he carries a small leather-bound journal. He's a man of overwhelming average appearance, neither attractive nor unattractive. His clothing is simple, with an unabashed nature to it. He dons a white crew-cut shirt, beige cargo shorts, and Birkenstock sandals. He's the epitome of normal. As he slumps into the ground, his sandaled feet slide through sand, capturing it between his toes. Behind his outdated glasses, his eyes are closed. He inhales the breeze as it overtakes him. The wind pushes and pulls the grass about, creating a soothing rustle of nature. Sound effects, the chime of a phone. Dexter's eyes wince at the trauma of the familiar sound. Montage beachgoers. From the boardwalk, a young man and woman take a selfie as the wind blows the woman's hat into the air. On the beach, 2 teenage girls are typing away at their cell phones, giggling in between alerts. Sound effects, a cacophony of cell phone tones and vibrates. Dexter's hand clenches into a balled-up fist. Among the noise, a cell phone tone gets louder. Besides Dexter, his phone is going off. Angle on phone. A picture appears of Camilla, 30s. The caller ID displays her name. In the photo, her arms are wrapped around Dexter as she gives a wide grin, while Dexter has a more controlled smirk. An attractive man holds out his camera, speaking to it as if to an audience. He uses his free hand to push at his hair that's tousled by the air current. Dexter's ears are ringing with a mixture of sounds. Sound effects. His cell phone gets even louder. Angle on phone. Camilla is still trying to get a hold of him. Dexter's eyes wince tighter, his face is riddled with agony. A fantastical vision of Camilla on the beach appears. She's smiling and laughing. Dexter's face relaxes for a moment. Same as before, we see Camilla. Reveal. Beside her is the attractive man from before. He wraps his arm around her shoulder, pulling her in for a selfie together. Dexter's hand comes up to his temple to rub at the visible strain on his face. Sound effects. The pulsation of his heart grows louder. Camilla and the attractive man look cheerful. They laugh and kiss as the camera continues to flash. Angle on phone. The call ends. Reveal several missed calls from Camilla. Sound effects. Everything goes silent. Exterior beach continuous. Sound effects. The wind running through the grass. The call of seagulls, and crashing waves of the ocean. His clenched hand gives way, allowing his fingers to slip deep into the sand. All at once, he exhales, and all the chaos is drowned out. He opens his eyes to greet this new and peaceful place. The sun shines through on the small, isolated mound he has placed himself on. He turns his attention now to his journal. Swiping through, he passes page after page of cursive writing and scribbled sketches. The artwork displays familiar faces such as Plato and Socrates. At last, a blank page. His pen glides onto the paper.
It is in this overgrown, forlorn section of the beach where I find release from the horrific insanity we call society.
Wind pushes at the edge of his page. His finger fights back against it, holding it down.
My admirations go to those philosophers, artists, and historians who so patiently strove to change them.
The beam of sunlight slips away as the clouds close in. The beach is grayer now as the waves crash hard against the sand.
Perhaps eudaimonia is not entirely unattainable for those who are willing to cast out their vanity and social obsessions.
Dexter is scribbling away into the notebook. In the distance, a group of beachgoers packs up their belongings, preparing to leave as the growing wind blows odd and end items about.
I like to think of myself as a philosopher of modern times, immersed in the splendor of appreciation for nature, beauty, fine art.
Angle on his journal. Dexter's sketch of the beach is a little warped, not his best work.
I suppose not all works of art are as fine as others.
Sound effects. Distant cries of thunder. He's startled by the sound. Now conscious of the changing surroundings, he looks forward-facing an incoming storm.
Unfortunate. To me, this has been a place of pristine solitude.
He closes his journal, pen trapped inside, wrapping the small ties around it.
Somewhere where the constant march of technological death finally loosens his grip on my soul.
He glances up at the slow encroaching clouds as he rises to his feet. He He brushes away bits of sand and debris from his cargo shorts. His eyes are caught by the storm in the distance.
Strange, though, as I gaze over the ocean swells my soul, and mind are touching something. Wait, hold on. Can I read that
Yeah,
one more
that's
time? Strange, though, as I gaze over the ocean swells... Okay. Strange, though, as I gaze over, the ocean swells
There
my
should be
soul,
a comma there.
and my mind are touching something. Okay.
One more time for me.
Oh, okay. All right. Again and again. Oh, this is my hell. All right. Strange, though, as I gaze over the ocean. Oh, God, dang it. Strange, though, as I gaze over, the ocean swells my soul, and mind are touching something.
Beat. The speed at which the storm moves has increased.
Something deep within that murky, distant darkness.
Do you want to go again?
Something
Are
deep
you
within that
okay?
murky, distant darkness.
He squints his eyes, focused on the storm that moves just on top of the ocean's horizon.
I've seen many a dark and distant storm. Somehow this...
As he turns his back to leave, the wind grows louder and violent. There is a faint voice echoing in the wind.
Death.
Dexter's posture stiffens. The hairs on his arms stand up.
This is something entirely sinister.
He chokes on his breath, frozen. The nape of his neck is riddled with goosebumps. Clenching his fists, he musters the strength to turn his attention back toward the storm. A peculiar shadow shifts behind the clouds of gray. The form is both massive in size, but faint enough that the nature of its shape is vague.
Oh, God.
Interior storm continuous. With rapid speed, the gap between Dexter and the storm disappears. His very being is shifted from the solid ground, now floating in the eye of the storm. His eyes are wide.
Delusion? This can't be real.
The clouds swirl around him in a constant shifting state. Small spurts of lightning flicker around him. Dexter's eyes are caught, looking up to something ferocious and unseen.
Fuck.
Exterior beach continuous. The journal falls to the ground, opening. Dexter stands in the sand, gasping, desperate for air. Dexter clasps at his chest as he falters his stance, half falling to the ground. Sound effects. Thunder grows louder. Beneath his feet, the very sand vibrates. The page of the journal shifts about, or the pages of the journal shift about. With violent panic, Dexter cries out, screaming incoherently. His body trembles as he attempts to run. He falls. His feet are sinking into the sand. Desperate, he turns back to the world beyond the beach, reaching out his hand, hoping anyone will find him, will grab his hand and save him. His cry is drowned out by the monstrous thunder. The pages of the journal flip violently one after another. Sound effects. A loud crack. Lightning strikes beside him. Sand and debris fly into the air. It catches his eye. Tears well up. He mouths no over and over and over again as a flurry of lightning strikes all about, surrounding him. The page of the journal turns to nothing, a blank page. The storm swirls in around him. He's overtaken by the swarm of dark clouds until nothing is left but darkness. Credits. No.
A plank
No,
page.
A plank page.
I actually prefer plank.
A plank
If I can put
It's just
any
a page
changes.
with a drawing
Just
of
have
the
like a-
character Plank from Ed, and Eddie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should have like that as like one of the like subvert like quick edits, and you know you
Yeah,
don't see it in,
like
a
a
blank
version.
page.
Yeah, I think that all the time. Like when we read scripts and there's errors, but then a part of it ends up being like, maybe we could sneak that in there somehow. You know what I
I've
mean?
always thought about that too, sort of the subliminal like quick reference.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a hinted Easter egg for
Yeah.
you know maybe the
for
production
just
crew.
the people who made it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that was the short script adaptation of Pure by Dewey D. Lang Jr.
Dwayne. Let's
Lane
say it out.
Jr.
Dwayne.
Dewey Dwayne Lane Jr. That is a tongue twister.
It is. I had teachers in school. They were like, "Oh my God, I have the worst kid in the world to say the name of."
Oh no! I mean, at least your names are all words that can be easily read.
Yeah.
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 It's not like looking at it, I was like, I don't know how to say that.
Like people who spell Ashley with an H and an EIG
like
or something.
eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia. All right.
I only know that because
is that from the video?
Yeah. So we had a lot of prep to write this script, and so we did like a plot outline. We did the character breakdown. And then after that, I even had more character questions for Dewey. And then on top of that, he sent me a video that talks a lot about like particular theories that were taught by Plato, because that's something that's really important to the character of Dexter and like who he sees or perceives himself to be or what he's aiming to be as a person. So we tried to create some little hints and references to Plato into the story.
I think the modern term for eudaimonia is discourse. Is that
discourse?
It might be. From my understanding of that video.
I don't know if I would say that.
I don't know if it's discourse or...
Because it's
so
just...
there was another word that I almost used that was also one of the Greek words in that, and that was doxa, and that's like popular opinion, but I didn't use it because I thought eudaimonia and like now we're just talking
just
Greek.
Like, we're throwing Greek words in there.
People.
Let's get let's get Caesar in there and let's go ahead and start
throwing
the Et Brute. Come on.
So we're getting to the Shakespearean.
In
a way, yeah.
Yeah. Eudaimonia.
Our one word.
Okay, so
I'm gonna ask you to crack into questions and stuff because I helped write it, so I already know a lot.
A lot. Okay.
She's been confused most of the time as I've tried to explain.
I'm really good about asking questions,
which I really love, and I'm really good about making it even more convoluted as I explain the questions, but we worked it out.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe I can bring up my my question again. Why now?
Yeah.
Why now is this happening? Is this like an anomaly that's just randomly happening, or is this kind of like a certain point where the character reached a certain point where this was going to happen inevitably, or...
So that's sort of one that's approached with the plotline outline and some of the information on the background. And we wanted to sort of make that a little bit subtle with his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. So at this point in time, his girlfriend and him are like at a breakup point.
Right.
And that's sort of his key cornerstone on the reason he's trying to find solitude and figure out what's his next step. And she's a bit more... She likes to be in technology more than him, and he's trying to have that disconnection so that he can figure out is it willing him that needs to go ahead and continue forward with that relationship, or is he need to just break away and do something else? And that sort of is the main reason that he's going to there right now. But we wanted that question to be there in a layer of other questions that are there, but we'll all through putting it into that. That's the reason that he sort of looks down at the phone. She's calling, but he's not answering.
Right.
And then he's seeing her with another man because they've broken up, so that could be the possibility, and that's causing him to sort of...
Like fantasize a version of her that's happy with someone else.
Mm-hmm. And you're seeing that visually, too, because that's one of the things that she points out, is you're actually sort of seeing her with that other guy that he's fantasizing, and that's sort of the beginning of his delusion or his break, as it were.
Now, I see that, like, towards the good section of, like, montage of that happening where, you know, not only is he seeing all the different, like, technological grips that...
Those annoying things that are driving him crazy.
And then it led to, like, Camila.
I named her Camila.
Yeah, actually, I was happy with that name.
Cool.
I was like that.
I wanted it to be something that could be any, ethnicity, because I just thought that, I'm assuming Dexter is probably a Caucasian male, so it'd be nice if there was,
Why do you say that?
Why do you say that? Like the way he dresses, like the way we describe him,
And there's actually a hint at the name as well, as it actually references to some of the Lovecraftian stuff, but I won't go into that.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
There's a lot that actually hints at Lovecraftian within it on, like,
which makes
the
sense
subtleties.
because, again, that's, stories written by
Yeah.
presumably a Caucasian male and Yeah.
But so to the point of that was, like, I feel like with that montage happening and then it being something that he's over with, like, by the end of page 2, it feels like he's successfully moved on from thinking about her. And,
Yeah, he starts to, he has his eyes closed, he has his eyes in the sand.
I
He's
think
yeah,
he gets
breathing
into
in.
himself.
he gets into himself.
Yeah.
Okay, is that where that will lead him to the whole darkness enveloping him?
Yeah, it's like
That he got into himself.
Yeah, something we talked about, if it's okay to
No, go ahead.
Something we talked about was this confrontation, this inner confrontation the character has of what he thinks the world expects him to be, which is kind of portrayed in that whole, like, we see his lover with someone else who is, you know, we're going to presume, like, probably more commercially attractive.
Better
and,
looking.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. And he's...
So Liam has the
Yeah,
first.
a guy, yeah.
Oh,
A
wow.
guy who, like, is obsessive with his image, right? Because we see that guy earlier and he's, like, doing a YouTube vlog or something. And
Yeah.
then we
Right.
see him again with Camilla and he's trying to take pictures with her. And it seems like it really portrays that idea of vanity. So I think that Dexter believes that that's the type of person that other people want him to be, and he is not. And I don't necessarily think that that's truly the case. I just think that he believes that. And we see that because in the picture on the cell phone where we see popping up when Camilla's calling, like, you see a picture of them together and she's, like, super happy and looks like,
Enjoying
she's
the
smiling
photo.
like she's
Yeah.
in love
Like
and she's having fun, and he
Mm.
just is kind of, like, more reserved and, like, I'm happy to be here, but I just, I'm not super into this.
Yeah.
So I think that the purpose of plugging that in there was to just kind of allude that, like, he is creating his own problems in a way. And then there's that other side where we watch him talk about himself, seeing himself as a modern philosopher, and I think that is, like, this very extravagant version of who he wants himself to be, but he's also just, a normal
reflecting
human
that,
being,
Like,
I think
Platonian, like, he's reflecting it on the wall.
Yeah.
he's putting himself in a different category. Okay. That's how I'm seeing it.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, see
And I
what
think
you're
that's how he causes his own, like,
his own inner
he's
turmoil
having a
that's-
conflict inside of who he thinks people want him to be, who he wants to be, and who he really is, which is just a normal person.
It's a normal person,
and
but-
is that the
Yeah.
destruction that he is facing, that to come to the realization that he's nobody?
I don't know. I mean,
That's that's the question. I think when people leave
yeah.
is that what you
What's
are? Because I want that
happening.
self-reflection
Because
on
the
the
other
person.
element of it is it real? Like, is this really happening? In which case, it's an act of God, which is like, that is unpredictable.
It's unpredictable.
Like, that's not something
You can't
that,
control that piece.
Right.
Yeah. Like, we don't know when the end is coming.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to.
So it's just beyond his control. Like,
Yeah, I think so.
He's like overwhelmed with the ability to try to control who he is and who he
Yeah.
thinks that
But
society
I
wants
think
him to be.
that's how we tie it to mental illness, is because, again, it's like, yeah, mental illness is, like, you are thinking these things, but it's not a conscious choice. It's not like I want to sit here and soak in self-loathing and contemplate about who I am or who I want to be or if I'm good enough. It just is this, like with anxiety or depression, like it just sets in and you can't control it and you can't fight it. It is a force of nature, just like in this story, like this godlike being or creature is a force of nature.
That is out of his control. And the whole concept of pure is eventually just allowing, well, you have sort of multiple layers of that, where you have either allowing yourself to just let go and be who you are and stop, creating the destruction that you are, or...
But because it's a horror, it's like...
But he's
consumed by it.
definitely
Consumed by
not.
it, yeah.
He's definitely not wanting to go quietly though.
No.
From what I
No.
understand. So
He's still fighting
I
it
thought
till
was
the very
ironic,
end.
You know, I tried to add irony in the end with him, like, turning back and screaming for help, because it's almost like, at the beginning we see him cast out society and want to be alone, and then at the end it's like, oh God, if
Please
only
help
someone
me.
was here.
Yeah. And at that point, no one's there.
so what a
All right.
coward.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And you see that actually a lot in Shakespearean as well.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you back and throw, Macbeth, and there's like
I kind
almost
of
every
think
one
it's
of them.
humanizing too to have a male protagonist who isn't like a hero, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, he's not going to try and
for
fight
sure.
this thing.
No,
like
no.
he's trying to get his ass out.
He wants to leave.
I'm gonna run.
you know,
Oh, it's just survival instincts at that
Yeah.
point.
But he's also caught in that that cape of fear that like if like somebody comes in with a gun and points at you, your initial instinct is that fight or flight. In most, especially in that situation, you're frozen. You don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know, military people sort of go through that type of training to understand that
And how to overcome it.
and how to overcome it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who deal with that situation, sometimes it's something that's just so cosmically overwhelming, they freeze, and then their next step, maybe it gets to the point where it's so overwhelming, they're like, they need help.
And I
but
need to run.
They need
Yeah.
to run. It's very layered, and it is very, trying to define a lot of it was, I think, one of the things that we went back and forth trying to make sure.
Like,
we
I just
develop
don't I just hope that it's not getting lost. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, I feel like, quite honestly, I would almost prefer to just keep because they're just, between pages, like the end of 2 and then 3, and then
Can you give the audience some context as to
4.
what's
Sorry,
happening?
sorry.
in
Yeah,
this?
yeah. I'm about to explain
Yeah.
why I'm bringing these pages up.
Yeah.
It seems like he's reached a neutral ground where it's just him, because in the beginning he is in a place of solitude, but there are those interactions from the outside world that also triggers him to remember the situation he is in with Camila.
You got it.
Camila?
That's
Camila.
the
Alright,
name.
cool.
Camila.
And then after that, like, he was able to just, okay, I'm gonna close the door on this. It's just me and my thoughts now. Is that how we want to? Is that how what you were going for in portraying him?
Yeah, you're
Like-
talking about at the point where he finally is able to just stop worrying about those things that are happening around him and just start writing and thinking about himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that I think that where the confusion I think that he's stepping in is like where, oh, well, he gets to this relaxed state, and all of a sudden, darkness and everything starts to become overwhelming. And that's one of the things that mental illness sort of plays a part, where a lot of times you thought that you've gotten past something.
yeah.
In mental illness, especially like depression and stuff like
And
that.
anxiety.
It
Like, it
definitely
can
anxiety.
hit when you think like, oh, like, I've been there. Like, all this stressful stuff is happening. I'm handling it pretty well. And then I sit there and everything's finally passed. And it's like, the storm is over. I'm not going to be upset. And then suddenly it's like, for some reason, I'm way more upset now that everything is done than I was when everything was happening.
It's like the drive home from something that you were like, oh, okay, I'm fine with. Like, you see, you go to a funeral, you don't really cry at the funeral as much. You go home from that funeral, everything to you think is over with. Halfway through the driving home, all of a sudden
Yeah.
you break out in a cry,
so
and
emotional.
your emotions are so overwhelming. You thought you've passed it, but in the end, your mind and your body have not made it past it yet. And that's where I think she captured that piece of it. And I know that's where it's probably confusing you, and I see where you're going with that.
I just would like 1 or 2 triggers before, and
Before
the
that.
triggers
Before the
can be
storm comes in, or?
before the storm comes in.
Okay.
But like, I don't want it to be triggers like, oh, that's definitely like, like I would prefer like moments of just super quick moments of those things that he thought he shut the door on come back.
Can I make a point
Go
to
ahead.
that, though?
Uh-huh.
Because I'm not opposed to there being triggers, but I would prefer if the triggers were things that came from within instead of things that came from around him. And the reason for that is because I think that a lot of times that's how depression and anxiety work, where it's like, and I know you get this, but
Right.
like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really anyone else's fault per se, or
It's
the
like your own
environment's
reflection on
fault.
that
It's
one.
like you just making things into a bigger issue than they
So,
are, or
overthinking.
well, like overthinking, or yeah.
No, okay, I get that. Like,
So
let's
I'd
see.
rather, if there's going to be triggers before the storm goes off, I want it to be like things he's thinking about or contemplating on himself that cause him to like
Well, maybe
question himself or
I wonder if
dislike
maybe
himself.
within that, maybe he has like a piece that would be a sort of a trigger where he actually reflects on Camilla, but not like the ringing, because the ringing is one of the
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that is one part of the trigger, but also maybe like he sees her with him, but then maybe there's another trigger that also is sort of the core trigger, like they're broken up, and that sort of bubbles back up again in his own sort of like insight where he thought he's past it, and then it comes up again somehow, like it could be something visually that he somehow starts to see again, and then there was like maybe the guy and her kissing, or there's something.
It could be like, okay, you go ahead.
Okay, I kind of want to support where you're going with
Yeah.
it being a self-imposed trigger
Yeah.
instead of it
Like
being,
you're creating
don't
it.
bring up sorry. What?
Camila.
Camila.
I
I guess I can't say that word, guys. Everybody. Fun fact.
Sorry
I
to all
can't.
the Camilas out there.
Okay. So that woman.
Woman one.
And woman one. All right. Okay. So, like, I like the idea that she isn't what's triggering it again after
Okay.
the sandwich of, like, the middle ground where he finds his little piece. Like
life is scary, but I'm scarier.
Yeah.
Like, my own problems with myself.
And I want that to be triggered by maybe the simple idea of I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Like, don't involve anyone else. Just him in his self-reflection is that I'm not good enough. And because we're bringing up the points where he's like calling himself like, oh, I can be a philosopher.
I consider myself
too.
a modern philosopher.
But that's not real. Like
Yeah.
realistically, him. Like that's not
Yeah.
him at all. That's just something he's striving to be, and maybe he sees himself as that, but he knows deep down in that truth that he is not. He is nothing. So like
that he doesn't have the impact that those people have.
and for some reason, oh sorry.
No. Like, as soon as you said that, popped up in my head. What if we add the line, almost like like the death one line, but what if we add in there as a subtext one that says like, "You're nothing."
Yeah.
Just I know that.
Well, and that's a question: is it?
Or are
So
you
the
nothing?
storm is kind of like, if the storm is, which again, like there's the dual-sided part of that story. Like the storm is an actual evil entity, or the storm is his personal like anxiety and depression. I was just going to say that if the storm is that thing, then should the storm then be, speaking to him and sending him messages? Because it's like, I don't know if you guys have seen this anime, but Your Lie in April, does that ring any bells with you guys? So in Your Lie in April, they do this thing really well where it's like, he's struggling with a conflict with his mother, but that's not really the key thing. The key thing is you see him talking to this black cat, and the black cat is a representation of his own fears and anxieties and like anger with himself, or him knocking himself down. And so I almost feel like the storm is the black cat for us. Like it is his personal internal, like
his internal conflict.
his own voice. Yeah.
What I like that, and I guess what I'm asking for is more allusion to that.
Yeah.
And this is just an idea that I came up with, where, he's been writing this whole time, right?
Yeah, he's writing.
And we assume that, he's writing whatever he's saying, like when we're watching this unfold, right? So it'll be a really disturbing thing to see is that when we do look at the page, maybe he was writing, but now it's just been this scribble of blackness.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, he's actually scribbling the mesoclone that's there.
Yeah.
He's coming.
Yeah,
up.
like
Okay.
he's been writing all these philosophical things, and then
But
you
he's
realize
not,
that maybe he doesn't realize it himself
that.
because he's
I
been
like that a
talking
lot.
this whole time,
Yeah.
and then
When
when
the
he
pages-
looks down at the page, it's just a giant black scribble. It's the dark spot. See,
yeah.
and that is an
So he's
allusion
like
to.
drawing the eye of the storm. That's
Yeah.
so like. Again, I always think of this, but that's so Junji Ito. Like,
Yeah.
Eugene,
so,
yeah. We're gonna do.
Yeah.
We're gonna go and do Naruto again.
I'm a big fan of the Ito.
The Ito.
for sure.
Yeah,
Let's get
There's
caught
I
in
could
the
see
spirals.
that. We're
Yeah.
getting spirals.
There's
in
something
there,
I just
like,
can't
yeah.
unsee when I look at his work, and
Oh, yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
crap. Okay, I guess that will
This
stick
haunt
with me forever.
Whenever I
The page
see a
flip.
spiral now, I'll
Yeah.
be disturbed.
But
Or,
yeah,
Yeah, I like that.
I think that would be very disturbing for the audience to see,
I think that
to
works.
be hearing his thoughts and him writing it down. But then when we look at the thoughts, they're just
It's just this
It's
big
just
spiral.
scribble.
That could be like like one of the scenes where you actually see the pages flipping closer to the end and we could focus in on that, like him actually seeing, and all of a sudden it's all that is just the circle going, or the mesoclone that
and it'll be like the eye of the storm, and then when the storm's like enveloping him.
Maybe that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Is that visual illusion? Am I using that word right?
Yeah.
illusion or
Illusion?
Illustration.
Like you're like foreshadowing.
Yeah. Alluding.
Yeah.
Alluding. I want that alluding.
Yeah.
Is
See,
that
there's
what-
alluding.
allude to.
I want
Yeah.
to allude to the storm visually or verbally before the storm shows up. But I
Also
like
known as foreshadowing. But
yes, foreshadowing. But don't bring up what was already closed on, like
Gotcha.
the
Oh no, I agree because
Okay.
it's like
The
those are
Kamala.
the real issues.
So so it goes like the Camilla thing is over with. We've moved on to another piece that actually has become the developing larger, internal struggle, and that, as
That
it
is the
close, that's the storm that you actually see written, or drawn down
Yeah.
at the end.
I hope that all makes sense.
I think so.
To us, it sort of
To
makes
us.
sense.
But to
hope
the
the
audience,
audience it makes
audience, just imagine you're like,
You
you
can
know,
comment below that
Like,
this
imagine
podcast
you're-
made no sense.
Yeah.
you're writing your grocery list, like,
Yeah.
eggs, milk, and then when you look down, it's just nothing.
Just circles.
Yeah.
Just
Nothing.
circles. Like, what was your groceries?
What were you in groceries?
You wouldn't like involuntarily, insane during that duration of time.
Yeah.
That's
I think that honestly, like I can't speak for the people who are listening, but I think that personally, a lot of the elements of the story are very relatable. Again, if you've ever experienced anxiety,
Oh, yeah.
or you've experienced
Don't like being
depression.
alone with my thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, I need something to think about. Another way, if it's just me in that room in
Yeah,
my
and
in my
considering
head,
this podcast
nah.
is for writers, like I think we're golden. Like,
Oh, yes.
If there's any group of individuals who are prone to mental illness, like,
What are you
Wow.
saying?
it's how we get so creative, though.
Yeah.
Well, that's how a coping mechanism, as much as I hate to say it, I don't want to say it, but writers and a lot of people that are artistic are finding ways to cope with things,
whatever emotional things they have, yeah.
emotional things from their tragic past to current situations, and that is an avenue that I think everybody can find something, especially if they struggle with it,
Yeah.
to take that and it becomes something more. And writing and stuff like this, I think, is definitely brings that to blossom.
I wish that's like a test like done in maybe like high school where it's like, all right, draw something, and then the people with the best drawings like, oh, we need to put you in therapy. But like people that can't draw for shit, it's like, oh, you have a wonderful life.
Yeah,
your parents
you're
love
very,
you.
very happy.
Oh my gosh, you're so happy.
Like the
I
question
definitely
after.
think I know
It's a
some
litmus
people.
test.
I definitely think I know some people who would not agree of the
I-
effectiveness of that test.
I
Yeah.
get it. I know.
It might create more,
Yeah.
But in the end, I can see where you're going with that, where it is a precursor. It is definitely a something that can be done. I know that psychologists, whenever they do interview people, there's multifaceted ways they approach it. They just have you talk about things, they have you draw things, they have you write things, they have you go home and go and do things that it's out of your sort of bucket of comfort.
Like for some people, if they're not artistic, it might be like crafting or cooking or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If it's cooking, though, man, that would be dangerous.
Oof. I know I flip out when I cook. Like that's my I feel like that's
Like when you're
How
done
am
and
I-
it's not what you expect.
this is my craft, and if I fuck up, that means I'm worthless.
Oh my God.
Maybe that's
And then
what.
I'm gonna have to go write a
Yeah.
script to feel better about it.
Well, that's so definitely like a lot of guys that like grill,
Yeah.
and I'm not the best griller by any means, but a lot of times it's I hate to be sort of sexist, but it's a lot of times a manually type of ordeal, and you go out there and you cook something, you get a steak, and you bring the steak in, all of a sudden you cut that steak open, and it is like crap,
Ruined.
It is ruined, and you're like,
your masculinity is challenged.
Challenged.
exactly.
That's so crazy. I'm going to be honest. I've never thought that like grilling was such a hardcore like hobbyist type thing until Dream Daddy, like playing the Dream Daddy game, and like one of the guys is super into grills. I didn't know that. Like I knew people. Here's the deal. I know people use grills, but I always assumed it was like a hey, on occasion we use this for the convenience of this particular meal. It's not like I love doing it, but apparently there are people who really love grilling.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an easy way to break down a man. Is like tell them to grill meat, and if they ruin it, say, hey, this sucks. You will break that person.
Yeah, if you go to like Food Network and watch the stuff against Bobby Flay, like the grill stuff that he does, where they compete against him. If you watch the men on that, it's like they are trying their best to keep themselves like stable, but as soon as the lights and everything are off, they go back and they're probably in the background just crying. I'm like, oh my god, I did not. Or if they won, it's like, oh yeah, like it is like winning the NFL to them. But it's just grilling, and it's and that's something that innately men happen to have and hope that they get.
Like you have a lot of pride for.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that.
And
I mean, I don't personally get that, but I mean, I understand what you mean when you say that.
The context of it.
As a woman.
I heard a knocks on the door.
Oh, it's Ashley.
Hey, sorry to ruin the party, but we have another
we're running
guest.
late. We're always running late.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
We have
I
a
guess that's our
reputation for
cue to
running late.
close
So
out.
we're gonna have to close this up.
All right.
So I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation about grilling.
About grilling, yes. This is the
That's all
grilling.
this is.
New girl on the block.
New girl on the block and getting lost in words and confusing Nero about.
Thanks for tuning in, folks.
Camellia?
Camila.
Camila? Camila.
We'll teach Nero how to say Camila, and we'll have him
Camila.
back on for the next episode.
Yes.
But
All
thanks,
your
folks, for listening. It's been such a pleasure. And if you have any comments about the story, the short story, or the script, both, feel free to send them in. Again, you can send them to info@arizonastudios.com. Feel free to comment where you're listening to podcasts. If you're listening on SoundCloud or YouTube, if you're listening on iTunes, then get to a safe location and send us the information via email. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this podcast, please. We'd appreciate it. And thanks again for tuning in. You'll hear us next time.